G'day, wrestling mates, and welcome to see If You See Kayfabe. I'm your host from Down Under, your wrestling mate, Southern Joe. And, yep, you can see we're in split screen, and that's because today, all the way from New York, we've got ourselves wrestling writing royalty. He's a podcaster, he's a YouTuber, he's an associate producer, he's done so much in the wrestling space. Please welcome my newest wrestling mate, Evan Ginzburg.
Great to be on, Joe. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So, how far back does your wrestling love go?
It goes back to 1972. I was a kid in New York, as you could tell by my accent, and I was home on a rainy, nasty day, just like today in New York, and I was bored out of my mind, and I discovered this UHF dial on the TV, this old-fashioned TV, black and white, and I start fiddling because I had nothing to do. This was pre-internet, pre-cell phone, pre-video games, so I'm going through this dial, and there's a lot of foreign language channels and heap public broadcasting, opera and stuff, and it didn't interest me as a kid. And all of a sudden, I see this massive, monstrous guy pounding on this Indian, and I'm like, what is this? I didn't even know what it was, and it turned out it was WWWF, and it was Chief Jay Strongbow, and I'm watching this as a kid, and all of a sudden, Strongbow does this herky-jerky war dance, and he makes this Superman comeback 10 years before Hulk Hogan or whatnot. And my mouth is open. I'm a kid. It's like Marvel superheroes and supervillains. And I made a mental note, when is this on? And I started watching every week. And I was addicted. And from there, I discovered we had Florida TV with Gordon Soley, and we had LA TV with John Tolos and Victor Rivera and the Hollywood Blondes, etc., so on. And I just loved it. And I was a total mark. I thought it was all real. I was a kid, and it was magic.
Yeah. Well, it was in that era because I'm from about the same sort of era. We had like Jim Barnett bring a whole bunch of Americans down to face our Australians. Ron Miller pinned Harley Race clean and on TV. And because I got in late, I didn't realise it was a non-title match. I thought, oh, great, and Aussies won the world title. So did you actually get Florida and LA TV on New York?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Florida TV was on Tuesday nights late, and I had to beg my parents, can I stay up late? And LA TV was on 7:30 on Wednesday nights, and it was in Spanish. It was on a Spanish network, but some of the promos were in English, and the announcing was in English. So, we watched, like I said, John Tolos was the man, Fred Blassie that era, Gordman and Goliath. Everybody came through LA. LA was a great territory at the time. And some of the guys that came to Australia, like Kowalski, they came through LA also. So,
Yeah. And I mean, so it's the same as me, about the same time getting into wrestling. When do you feel like you got smartened up to the business?
It's a funny story. It's actually in my book, Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. I tell this story. I would stand outside Madison Square Garden as a kid and wait for autographs with my dad. And Andre the Giant and Dusty Rhodes would never sign an autograph for us kids. Wouldn't so much as look at us, just ignore us. And then the heels, Superstar Billy Graham, the Grand Wizard, Albano, George the Animal Steel, they were nice as could be. So I'm like, I'm a kid and I'm smartening up. I'm like, wow, sometimes the good guys aren't so nice, and sometimes the bad guys are super nice. What's this all about? Like Billy Graham couldn't be any nicer. And I mean, some of the faces were great. Bruno was always nice, and Tito Santana, and some of the guys were great, but there were exceptions. And for the most part, the heels were nice. And Nikolai, who became a friend of mine, Nikolai Volkov, he was like,
Mm.
when he died, Bret Hart said Nikolai Volkov was the nicest wrestler I ever met. And if you saw him, in the 70s and 80s, boy, he was hated. He was,
He had
the
real
heat
heat.
was off the charts. Nikolai used to
Yeah,
say to me, they would sneak him and Iron Sheik out in an ambulance in the middle of the card because they were scared if they walked out at the end with all the fans at the door, there would be violence. I mean,
yeah.
they had to hide in an ambulance and drive out mid card.
Oh, crikeys. No, but in the smartening, I'm sort of saying, because, like, for me, it wasn't until someone said to me, "Oh, this is all pre-planned and so forth. It's all the work," and my initial thought was, "Oh, well, that must be true for the preliminary things, but when it gets up to a title match, surely they're real." And I still held on to that belief because
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
from that crossover. I'm
Me
from
too.
that crossover. Yeah. So, um, so was it that interactions with the heels and baby faces that made you think work out there was a work, or
Well,
you just
that was
worked out the
part of it.
characters?
That was a big part of it. But the other thing that happened was the quote unquote big kids, because I wasn't a big kid, they said to me on April 30th, 1977, superstar Billy Graham's going to beat Bruno in Baltimore. And I'm like, what? What? Bruno wouldn't throw a match. They're like, this isn't real, kid. It's not real. And that's exactly what happened. And I was at first disillusioned. And then it's like, okay, Bruce Lee isn't really killing the guy, and Clint Eastwood isn't really shooting the guy. And I'll enjoy it for what it is. And that's what happened.
Because for me, it happened a lot later, only because when Australia went dark in '78, we didn't really get anything on TV till WrestleMania 1,
Oh, okay.
and 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 also too, um, the John Stossel expose. The only clip we ever saw was of him getting whacked out by Dr. D,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and plus I discovered the Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines, and they were kayfabing in their magazines. They still,
Yeah,
they and so then, yeah, it was hard getting any sort of, because unbeknownst to me, there wasn't much of the dirt sheets, as it were, in that
well, they
regard.
existed, but back in the 70s, it was more results and clips, and there were fans that just loved it and shared it. It wasn't so much exposing the business. Meltzer came along and guys like that, and then it became more, the insider stuff. And I mean, the fans kind of knew from the early quote unquote dirt sheets, because you would see, for example, Blassie was a face in LA and he was a heel in New York for
Mm.
WWF. And you kind of say, wait, what's this all about? As kids. And you're putting all the pieces together. And, but the sheets always existed in some form. But basically, when WrestleMania, Hulk Hogan, Rock and Wrestling, when that whole era came about, the sheets kind of exploded as well. Because again, this was really pre-internet, and and then it was like a big industry, Wrestling Observer, Wrestling Torch, and a bunch of others, and you could get the inside scoops and such. Um,
Mm.
but you know, I sometimes all the inside stuff is actually disillusioning. It's almost like I don't need to know the result before I watch the match.
Yeah,
Because
I'm the same. I'm the same because I've started going to a local promotion down here in Melbourne. It's only 20 minutes away from where I live, called Alpha Pro Wrestling, and they just had Mike Quackenbush come out and do some training, and
He's
he
very
headlined the
respected
card.
here on the East Coast.
Yeah, well, he did some training and he headlined last night, but I talked to some of the wrestlers afterwards, and I was almost privy to something I shouldn't have been privy to, and I just walked away because I thought I don't want to know what happened, but afterwards I'll say, yeah, nice heel turn, or that spot was good, or what have you. But I know I could never, even during my so-called salad days, I know I couldn't have done what they did. It takes a certain skill, so even if it is predetermined.
Yeah, as a kid, as you start to understand it, and you kind of have to roll with the punches, and it can be disillusioning to a degree. Your heroes, it's a work. It's a work. It's
Mm,
not. See, as a kid, you see, people really don't understand the mentality of a '70s fan. We were blue collar marks for the most part, and if somebody jumped or punched or beat or made Bruno bleed, you felt it. You felt it.
mm,
And when Bruno Sammartino would make that big comeback, or Pedro Morales or Strongbow or Monsoon, any of the faces, Tony Gurria, Dean Ho, you were like beating up the bullies at school, and you were totally feeling every punch and kick. And the average person today who's quote unquote smartened up, although many of them think they're smartened up, but they're really not, because I hear
mm.
ridiculous things like, quote, they all blew fortunes on wine, women, and song.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
true. I mean, legendary wrestlers from that era, a lot of them never broke 100 grand, and they were on the road 300 plus days a year. So the idea that they all made fortunes and squandered it
No.
is a corporate apologist myth. It's a myth. Some did. You could even say many did, but they didn't all do it, because a lot of them never broke 100 grand. Trust me. A lot of these legends are friends of mine. And, I got the
Well,
numbers. Yeah.
yeah, because plus they're paying for their trans, they're paying for their hotels, they've got to buy their meals in between, and in a lot of cases they're buying their own ring gear. I hear the Australians. One Australian I was just talking to last night. He had to put down 300 bucks on ring gear, and even there's that famous story of when one of the territory guys, who was it? It was Bill Watt. No, was it Bill Watts? Or he was saying, none of you guys better be on steroids. And Dutch Mantel yells out from the back, some of us are not even on food.
Wow. Some of these guys spent 100 grand a year on trans. You have to realize that it's hotels every night, and three
Mm-hmm.
meals a day, and gas and tolls, and cleaning and laundry, and supporting a family back home,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
taxes. Let me
Yeah.
put it to you this way: mid '80s. I mean, guys like Nikolai were my friends, and they would tell me numbers. You're making, let's say, 400 grand a year, okay, which sounds like a lot of money to the average person. But you're traveling. I was associate producer on the movie 350 Days, the
Mm-hmm.
documentary. Bret Hart told us he worked 330 days a year. Okay. And Greg Valentine said he worked 320 days a year at his peak when he was main
Mm-hmm.
eventing. So do the math. Even if you're making 400 grand, if you're working 320 or 330 times, this is not a windfall. It's not a
Mm.
financial windfall. The same guys headlining those arenas, let's say Mick Jagger, Elton John, James Brown, whoever it was, it's they're making a lot more than these wrestlers were. These wrestlers were making four figures, not five, headlining major
Mm-hmm.
arenas. It's not a windfall.
Yeah, I can understand that too, because with all the travel and just everything else, and plus putting their body on the line every night. because some of the I've heard about how some of the injuries can come from the most simplest of moves.
Greg Valentine ripped his knee apart walking up the ring steps before he even got in the ring. The ring steps collapsed.
Hey.
It was so old and shabby, whatever the ring steps were, that his knee was injured before he even got in the ring, and he needed a surgery. And some of these rings are very hard. It's not all WWE quality. And even just the other day, Drew McIntyre was quoted. He said, "Gravity isn't fake. When somebody throws me through the air and I land, quote, it hurts." He actually said it hurts. And I've had wrestler friends tell me, "Evan, I'm always in pain. Always in pain."
Yeah.
So
even if they take a flat back.
Yeah, wrestlers will say, "I only have so many bumps on my bump card. Eventually, your body is going to give out." It's human. You're a human being. You're not. See, people get confused with the characters they play. These are real flesh and blood people. You throw a 300-pound guy in the air, when he lands, it's not conducive to your health.
But do you think that's suspension of belief more so now? Because if you look back, Harley Race won his first title with a back suplex, with a vertical suplex. Now, I mean, once upon a time, these devastating looking finishes were protected. Even a Hulk Hogan leg drop, which technically doesn't look as devastating as a pile driver or a DDT. Yet now they're kicking out of DDTs and multiple pile drivers. And it's taking away that believability, I believe. What do you think on that?
Um, you know, it's all suspension of disbelief. I'm an old school fan, but I still enjoy today's wrestling. Not so much the WWE product, with exceptions. I think Cody is excellent, and Reigns, when he has working boots on, is excellent, and Charlotte Flair. Jacob Fatu. I mean, I enjoy but I don't really like the 10-minute entrances and the sing-alongs and all of that. But to get to your point, it's all suspension of disbelief. I mean, Hulk Hogan's Superman comeback mid-match, where he suddenly hulks up and he's pinning Greg Valentine in 8 minutes or whatnot. When I saw Valentine go 60 minutes with Bob Backlund, there's suspension of disbelief. How did this guy just suddenly get this superpower to come back? Or The Undertaker rising from the dead, like Michael Myers in Halloween, or Kane doing some supernatural nonsense. There was always suspension of disbelief. So, I mean, back in the 60s, you had wrestlers, the Mummy. You had the Frankenstein monster in the 70s in LA and Arizona. And so, it's like, okay, yeah, a lot of these finishes used to be finishes, but now it's just one of 37 high spots or whatnot. But you kind of roll with it. I find it interesting. I find it interesting that people dismiss lucha entirely, and I like lucha. They go, "Oh, they're just waiting outside for the guy to jump on them." I go, "All right, but in WWE, you roll with some really silly gimmicks or whatnot. Why can't you roll with that? It's what you're willing. It's what you're willing to accept. Or again, it's like watching a movie. I just saw Jason Statham, A Working Man, and I even interviewed David Ayer, the director for Pro Wrestling Stories. I'm the senior editor over there. Yes. So Jason Statham, they kidnap his friend, and he kills like 300 people. There's bullets, there's fire, the guy's unscathed. There's suspension of disbelief, It's like, are you going to roll with it, or are you not going to roll with it? I mean, if I'm investing 3 hours in a premium live event or pay-per-view, whatever you prefer to call it, you want to enjoy it as much as possible. So
Yeah.
me sitting there going, this is incredible, this is silly, this is ridiculous. I love guys like Will Ospreay,
Yeah.
like Kenny Omega. I think these guys are artists. You could say some of what they do isn't the most credible thing, but neither was The Undertaker, and he's on the fans' good list. So,
Yeah. I, I suppose because he's got credit, there's people that have given him his chops on it. So let me just, the 350 Days documentary, that was, is that about how many days of a year a wrestler will be out? Is that why the movie was
the
titled?
title comes from the NWA champions literally wrestling 350 days a year. The insane schedule and toll that takes on your body, your psyche, your family life, your relationships with your children. You just weren't home. You were not home. And basically we had Superstar Billy Graham, Bret Hart, Valentine, Tito, 3 dozen legends, literally 3 dozen legends, George the Animal Steel, etc., so on.
Cool.
Paul Orndorff. I mean, anybody, and I can't say everybody, but 3 dozen legitimate legends, and they pour their hearts out. And Wendy Richter in the film says, I couldn't have a baby. Where am I going to put my baby? On the ring steps while on the ring apron while I wrestle? I mean, how could you have a baby as a woman at that period, mid 80s?
Yeah.
They would crisscross the country. Vince McMahon Jr., not the father, Vince McMahon Jr., he'd have them on the West Coast one day, on the East Coast of the United States the next day. Then they'd shoot over to Europe. Nikolai Volkov, who was a dear friend, I would room with him on the road as an agent. We would book these guys for autograph appearances. And Nikolai said to me, I fell asleep once with my eyes open. I didn't know this was humanly possible.
Gee.
That's how exhausted, and this was a big, strong man. So, powerful guy. And so it was superhuman. And you started to talk about this earlier in the show. They would get hurt, and they were scared of losing their spots. So
Yes.
they would take painkillers or whatever they needed to continue. Nikolai was squeaky clean, but some of these guys developed addictions, and they didn't get out of this alive. There's a long trail of dead before their time, as the old expression goes, good-looking young corpses. It's a shame. It's a shame.
Yes.
But, you have a push, you have a spot, you're making decent money, and you didn't want to lose it. So you taped up whatever and took whatever pill you needed to get through it. And brutal. And these guys were considered independent contractors, no 401ks, no health benefits, no pensions. What do you need? What do you need to be an employee beyond working 300 plus days for somebody year after year after year? School teachers in New York work 180 days a year, and they're considered full-time employees with benefits and pensions. I mean, brutal and unfair what these guys were subjected to.
Yeah. Well, I've heard of that independent contractor, and I think the word independent is misunderstood because, like, I'm a courier here in Melbourne, but I'm self-employed and I'm called a subcontractor.
Right.
So I work for this courier company, and they hire me out to this other company to do. Well, I do delivery of European car parts, but
Okay.
so here we call it subcontracting, whereas you guys call it independent. And I think the independent part just means they're independent of the employee payroll of whether it's AEW, WWE, or what have you. But I think that's where that they need to sort of get that wording right, because independent, you think, oh, I'm free to do what I want. yes, I've got a contract with WWE, but geez, I want to go and do um, this thing over at New York or what have you, where they can't because they're locked in. But then
Yeah.
there's an argument.
Well, it's to the advantage of the billion-dollar corporation. I mean, today
Mm,
the stars are making good money and they're on a lighter schedule. And guys like
mm,
Roman Reigns, it's almost like you barely wrestle and you're making great money. So, but that again is the stars. There's other guys who unceremoniously will be quote unquote future endeavored during mass layoffs in record breaking profitable years. It's still a
mm.
ruthless business for many, but the top stars are doing well today.
Yeah. What was your first job? When did you get your first job in wrestling?
Um, it depends what you consider a job. I was a sheet editor as of 1990. And what happens is one thing always leads to another. Because of the my sheet was called Wrestling Then and Now, and it was more history than news. And so from that, I ended up on a 50,000-watt New York City radio station because the host, his name is Fred Giabold. He's gone now. He brought me on the show because he loved wrestling. He was an old school AWA fan from.
Mm,
He grew up in the Midwest, but the show was based out of New York. It was WBAI FM 99.5, and this was a major station in New York, 50,000 watts. So
mm,
I would do a wrestling segment, and from there we would have wrestlers on the show in studio or by phone. And from there, one day Johnny Valiant from the Valiant Brothers, he says to me, "Why don't you be my manager, be my agent?" And I said, "I've never done anything like that." He says, "Quote, you're a smart guy. You could do this." So, I mean, he was like one of my childhood heroes, the Valiant Brothers. They were number one tag team in the world in the 70s.
mm,
So I said, "Okay, what do I have to lose?" And I started booking him for indie wrestling matches, for autograph signings, personal appearances. Um, and he even did a one-man comedy show at the time. He would do a one-man theatrical comedy show.
mm,
So from there, I had Johnny and Nikolai booked for an autograph appearance.
mm,
And the best friend of the executive producer, that's the money guy on Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler,
mhm,
walks into the appearance and says to me, "You guys would be perfect for this movie my buddy Scott Franklin is working on. It's The Wrestler. Do you know Darren Aronofsky?" And I'm a cinephile. I love film. I said, "Yeah, I know
mhm,
Darren Aronofsky, Requiem for a Dream, Pie. I know his films. Guy's a genius." And they're like, "We're doing a film on pro wrestling." So he takes my business card, and months go by, maybe 6 months, and I almost forgot about it. And I get a call all of a sudden. "Would you guys be willing to meet with us and meet with Darren as we have this script in the works for The Wrestler?" And I bring Nikolai, Johnny Valiant, Nikolai's shoot manager, Nikita Brezhnikov, who also worked with him on the Indies, Tiger Khan, who worked for the Hearts up in Calgary, myself. And we meet with Darren Aronofsky and Scott Franklin and Rob Siegel, the screenwriter. And
mhm,
it didn't even feel like a meeting. I mean, Johnny was literally a comedian, and Nikolai was so warm and friendly, and he was telling road stories. We were just laughing and drinking beer. I mean, like hours went by. It just felt like old friends by the end of the night. So again, a couple of months go by, and all of a sudden I get a call. "We'd like you to be the associate producer on The Wrestler." And people get confused by these titles. Basically, I was the wrestling guy. I brought in Mickey's stunt double, his ring, his trainer, Alpha the Samoan. I did 5 or 6 casting calls with all the wrestlers. I brought in Ron Killings and Necro Butcher, and it was one of the great experiences of my life. And so one thing always leads to another. And from there, I get a call from another Darren Antola, who says we're doing this documentary 350 days. And part of me was like, we're never going to top The Wrestler. I don't really need to do another wrestling movie. If I'm going to try to make my mark in film, let me do something else. But we met, and the guy was so sincere, blue collar guy, not a rich guy. And he's like, God, did I ever love Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff and Snooker and Morocco, and we just saw everything eye to eye. And he said when Snooker jumped off the cage on Morocco, that was like the greatest thing I've ever. I was there. I was physically there at the Garden that night.
Oh, wow! Were you close to it?
I was ringside. Yeah, it was unbelievable. And Snooker's climbing to the top of the cage, and I'm with my buddy Scott Bernstein, and I go, "No, he's not going to jump off the top of the cage." I don't. And the guy actually jumped up before he came down. If you watch the video on YouTube.
Yes.
And this, again, the technology was so primitive that thousands of flash cubes went off. Flash cubes on camera.
Yeah.
And I tell people it was not the greatest match of all time. It was the greatest moment of all time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because they just roared. We roared for like 5 minutes. It was like the heat was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
And
he executed it.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And another time, Snooker jumped off the top of the cage and missed with Backlund. That was a different night.
Yeah.
Yeah. He missed the leap off the cage. But Lanny Poffo, who was a dear friend, he told me Snooker used to do that off the top of the cage all over the country before this in the territories, but it wasn't filmed. We didn't see it.
Filmed.
Yeah.
Well, that was the test run.
Yeah. Snooker, prime Snooker, face or heel. That guy was unbelievable.
Yeah, very, very good. With The Wrestler, because I heard your interview from a couple of years, researching for upcoming with this thing, when you talked to Brian R. Sullivan a couple of years ago, and you're talking about how Nicolas Cage was nearly going to be in the Mickey Rourke position, and how it wasn't right, but Mickey Rourke was. Was any wrestler ever considered for that part?
No. The whole thing with Hogan never happened.
Yeah, I know. That was the next question.
What happened was we wanted $18 million, which is not a lot of money, believe it or not. But Mickey's star had waned. He was pretty much direct to video, action kind of movies at that point. And we could only raise $6 million. And to the point where we couldn't even afford extras in some of those scenes. We were shooting like at Ring of Honor shows, and those were real fans for the most part. And so we would be shooting, and the Ring of Honor fans, they were like annoyed, like we're interrupting their wrestling show, And at one point, Aronofsky had to actually get in the ring and do a speech. And he go, guys, we're going to do you proud. Just let me get 1 or 2 more quick takes. We'll be out of here before you know it, because we were not welcome. It was like guerrilla filmmaking. We were like in and out at these live wrestling shows, Jersey All Pro, Ring of Honor. So it was a great experience. So getting back to the Nicolas Cage thing, one night Darren has me meet Nicolas Cage in the parking lot of Hammerstein Ballroom before a Ring of Honor show. And he says, Evan, get Nick up backstage before the paparazzi. This is 2007 or so. The film came out in 2008. And he was a big, big star at the time, Nicolas Cage. And he was top box office back then. This is going back almost 20 years. So I meet Nicolas Cage in the parking lot. And my first reaction is like I'm marking out to a degree, like this is one of the biggest movie stars in the world. And then I get this strange thought. I happen to notice he's wearing, just a regular pair of jeans and just a regular pair of shoes. And he didn't have that star, like, he wasn't wearing a $3,000 suit or anything. And I'm like, he's just another guy. He breathes air, and he was so warm and gracious and friendly. So I whisk him backstage, and we're watching the Ring of Honor show on monitors. And he at one point he looks at me and he goes, "Evan, is this real, like MMA, like UFC?" And I go, "No." I said it's hard hitting, but he didn't even know what he was watching. And wonderful guy, but after the fact, I'm with Aronofsky back at his studio, Protozoa Studios in Brooklyn, and it's just me and him. And he says, "Evan, Nick's a great guy, but he's a walking corporation. There's a manager, an agent, a hairstylist, et cetera, so on down the line." And he says, "Mickey's the right guy. Mickey's the right guy." Because he looked beaten down. Mickey Rourke was a top box office sex symbol in the 80s, and he left acting to get punched in the face as a boxer. Professional boxer. Look it up. There's videos out there. It's surreal. I mean, this is not a normal trajectory. Actors protect their face. They're not looking to get punched in the face. So he's like a tortured artist. I never saw him say no for an autograph, a picture. Nicest guy, but a tortured artist to a degree. And I write all about the making of the wrestler in my book. That's why I call the book Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. I always juggled wrestling as an agent, etc. I've done play-by-play. I've done heel managing, etc. So on. Wrestling, Blackboards. I made a living as a teacher because it took 7 years to get paid for the wrestler. 7 years. We worked on that off and on. It took 6 years to get paid for 350 days. That film took 6 years. People have no idea what goes into a quality film. They're used to WWE pumping out stuff like constantly. Which is why much of it is forgettable. Yeah, you put the time in if you want to do something great. Yeah.
I did watch The Wrestler a few years ago, and I thought it was very credible as a movie because it showed wrestlers in their true light. And I even heard about how some wrestlers who've had a tortured past felt that it was a bit too close to the bone for them, and it was hard for them to watch.
Well, Jim Cornette said he did not like The Wrestler. I'm paraphrasing because, well, we don't all live in trailer parks. And I understand that. Nikolai had a farm. He saved his money. Bret Hart ended well. Annie Poffo ended well. Not all of these guys end in trailer parks. But that was the story we told. Darren Aronofsky, look at any of his films. They lean dark. He doesn't do rom-coms. The Whale with Brendan Fraser, which won the Oscar, this guy was 600 pounds and dying. This was not a laugh riot, So that's the story that they wanted to tell. And plenty of wrestlers end up, bouncing at the rock club or the strip club. They don't. I know guys who headlined Madison Square Garden. They ended up pushing a broom afterwards as a janitor. I know guys. One of the unsung heroes of pro wrestling is Davey O'Hannon, who worked for the WWF, and I think he did a campaign in Australia for a bit. Also, Davey O'Hannon, you can look him up, and he got Baron Cicluna and S.D. Jones and a bunch of guys, jobs delivering newspapers for the New York Times.
Oh boy.
Why? Because there were benefits and pensions and decent
Mm-hmm.
pay. And,
Mm-hmm.
and again, a lot of these guys did not make big money that era. And they needed, we call it shoot jobs, after the glory. And, it's a brutal business, and a lot of these guys did not end well. And when they need GoFundMe's at the end, because they're trying to save their house or for hospital bills or to be buried, how utterly disgraceful it is that a billion-dollar corporation like WWE, Triple H at the press scrums post premium live events, we broke another record-breaking gate because we jacked up the ticket prices obscenely. Take care of some of these guys. And again, they didn't all squander their money. A lot of them never made it to begin with. They got, a minuscule cut of merchandise, the biggest stars that came along. And some of them, there never was merchandise. Their careers peaked before that. And, they don't end well, many of them.
Yeah, and it's a shame because of what they put their bodies through, and the perception. Because you're on TV, you must be making money. But I do know there's a difference between what you pay gross and what you got to pay out.
And you're supporting a family back home.
Yeah.
People forget that little detail. You're living two lives. You're supporting yourself on the road and the families back home. And do the math. And if you're making even decent money, you're going to get murdered in taxes. It's we have April 15 is tax day here in America, so it's fresh on people's minds. It's like if you're making any kind of decent money, you're going to get clobbered with taxes. So it's like the pie chart in high school when you're learning math. You have the taxes, the road expenses, the family back home, et cetera, so on. And then Vince comes along and he wants everybody to look like a Marvel superhero, with Hulk Hogan like physiques, and the enhancement drugs cost money too. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Do you miss those sort of simpler days where the wrestlers just looked in good shape, but were naturally strong? Like, say for example, maybe even like a Dick the Bulldog Brower, who was muscly but didn't look like a condom full of walnuts.
The Vince McMahon had this muscle fetish. He was a big bodybuilder himself, and I'm in decent shape. I'm going to the gym right after this interview. But the point is, some of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I've interviewed many, many legends over the years, and they'll tell you prime Ray Stevens, who was big in Australia. Prime Ray Stevens was the greatest of all time, some of them say. And he had a beer belly. And Harley Race had a beer belly. And Pat Patterson, who was unbelievable, had a beer belly. And why does that preclude being a great wrestler? We're not going to push you in WWE. Kevin Owens is the exception. He doesn't have a great physique, but he's a strong, powerful guy. But,
and he moves well for his size.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorites. Him and Samoa Joe are two of my favorites.
Samoa Joe's great, and I'm a big Ring of Honor fan, especially the Nigel McGuinness era when he was champ. Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson, that was like Dory Funk, Jack Briscoe, Flash Steamboat. That was art, wrestling elevated to art. So the fans who do all those ROH guys, all those AEW guys, they're just spot monkeys. Sit down and watch Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness. I mean, and tell me that isn't great wrestling, great art. I mean, it's easy to dismiss things. And the irony is a lot of the fans that do that, they don't even watch it. They don't even watch it. They
Yeah.
go, "Oh, I don't watch that AEW. They're just all spot monkeys." Well, if you don't watch it, how do you know that?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, I pick and choose who I watch because it doesn't. I don't go into this tribalism thing because if they say, "Oh, it's an AEW thing," well, a lot of those guys started elsewhere other than AEW. AEW's only been around for 5 years, so if you've got a 20-year veteran in there, how do you reconcile? Oh, he's a star in AEW when AEW's only 5 years old. So
I mean,
I can't stand this tribalism thing. It never.
yeah, it's utterly insane that basically the WWE fans hate the AEW fans or hate AEW, and sometimes vice versa.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are billion-dollar corporations. It's not your home sports team, which are also
Mm.
billion-dollar corporations. But but my point is, I, as a quote unquote journalist, if I watch a WWE pay per view, I'm going to call it down the middle and review it
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Yep.
This, like, for example, CM Punk and Drew McIntyre in the cage recently. That was a great match. It was a
Mm.
brutal, bloody, excellent match.
Mm.
Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns was an excellent match. I mean, I might prefer watching Will Ospreay or Kenny Omega, but I'm not going to just dismiss or trash something because it's a different promotion. You're supposed to call. I think you should treat wrestling like a smorgasbord. Watch what you
Oh
like. Don't
yeah.
watch what you don't like.
Absolutely.
Not obligated to watch every hour of WWE TV or AEW TV. You know, watch what you enjoy and forget about the rest.
I reckon the modern day fan would be horrified with what you and I grew up on, where most of your TV was squash matches.
Well, you the difference is you tuned it in to watch the promos
Yeah.
because superstar Billy Graham, when he first came out in 1975, I
Seven,
believe it
so
was,
five. Yeah.
WWF. When he first came out, he had like dropped from another planet. Guys just didn't look like that, with the
Yeah.
bleached blonde hair and muscles on top of muscles. And he was like a cross between Muhammad Ali and Gorgeous George. And I mean, as a kid, a skinny kid, I'm sitting there like awestruck, like this is
Mm.
like a superhero or a supervillain, I should say. And I was at the Garden February '76, and he's wrestling Bruno, and they just walked down the aisle in a pair of tights, no pyro, no music, no entrance music, and the building shook on sheer
Mm.
charisma. And I saw one match at the Garden. It was Bruno and Billy Graham, and Monsoon was the ref. Billy Graham, in the middle of the match, goes like this: "I quit." Goes back to the dressing room. Next thing you know, Monsoon's chasing after him. He puts Billy Graham on his shoulders, dumps him in the ring, and it was like the Roman Colosseum because Bruno's pouncing on him, and we're just like it's like bloodlust. We wanted Bruno to murder this guy. So people don't understand like the emotional involvement. Today, everybody's smartened up. And I don't like this guy's getting this push, and I don't like this guy's not getting the push. And you didn't have that emotional involvement. These were real. I'll take it to another place. My father was a World War II veteran.
Mm-hmm.
They're sitting there, and for the most part, not all, but for the most part, it's a mock audience. And you got Waldo von Erich
Yeah.
and Baron
Yeah.
von Raschke. And our parents were in Germany getting shot at.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah. Well, my parents are Hungarian, and they didn't sort of my because my dad sort of was the one who got me interested in professional wrestling.
yeah.
Apparently, he actually went before he came to Australia because he's now passed away 5 years ago. But apparently, before my parents moved to Australia, they lived in England for a little while, and apparently he did a couple of matches with some independent. But yeah, we had the tag team of Waldo Von Erich and Mr. Tojo waving around a Japanese
Yeah.
flag
Yeah.
with
So
Big Bad John with that crash helmet on his head.
yeah,
Oh,
so veterans of that era, do the math. The World War II ended in 45. You're talking 1975 or whatnot. You know, these guys fought in the war. My father, we're Jewish. He did the clerical to
oh,
free a concentration camp.
oh
Okay, and
wow.
he would say to me, they were walking skeletons, you know.
Yeah.
So that, and then you have Waldo von Erich with the Nazi regalia, you know.
Uh,
Yeah, you know. So the heat was off the charts. Today, the fans are so smartened up. Oh, I think Cena is going to win the belt because he only has a 1 year contract. They're coming from a totally different place.
yeah,
And
I know. They're all trying to work out. Although I do that at the matches, I still don't want to know what's happening ahead of time, but I'm not judging it by who should get this push, but what I still try and do it by what's in the match. Like you see how a match is going, and you say, okay, it looks like this could be happening or that could be happening, rather than, well, I know that this guy is getting a push, they're going to make him champ.
yeah, yeah.
We,
I root for a good match. That's what I root for these
yeah,
days. I mean, I was saying to somebody at WrestleMania, one of the nights, they have Seth Rollins and Reigns and CM Punk. And I'm like, I like all those guys. I don't care who wins or loses. I really don't. So you just root for a great match. And when you become jaded, I mean, we're watching 50 years, 50 plus years. You don't win, lose, or draw doesn't matter as much. I just don't want to squander 4 hours watching mediocrity. I want to see great wrestling. And
yeah,
what I found in recent years with WWE, by the middle of the show, pay-per-view, premium live events, whatever you prefer calling it, by the middle of the show, I'm like numb. And then Gunther comes out and has an excellent match, or Cody comes out and has an excellent match, and they
yeah.
salvage it somehow. But, you know, NWA house shows of the 80s with the Horsemen and Flair and the Russians and the Road Warriors, Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, those house shows for 10, 15, $20 blew away any WrestleMania. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I was there. You know, these WrestleManias, you're paying for the elaborate entrances and the costumes and the pyro and the live music and such. And, you know, wrestling wise, it doesn't touch it. It doesn't touch it. I'm sorry.
I have heard the theory about why they have that because they have like a what they call a let me up match, which is to have the trough. Yeah, because like you get the what they call I would call a curtain jerkers who come out and create heat straight away. Then a bit later they'll have a match that might be like a throwaway match, and then after that the main eventers will come and build it up, or even the same semi-main eventers. I mean, WrestleMania 3, I still think Savage Steamboat killed anything else on that card.
I think that may have been the greatest WrestleMania match ever. It
Oh,
was
absolutely,
unbelievable. Unbelievable.
absolutely. It was so full of good story, great moves, well executed, believable as well. Because I while I still root for a good match, I actually still mark out for my favourites, and I get slightly upset when my favourites don't win because I'm
Well,
tribal in my sports.
I don't like when a buffoonish, cartoonish character wrestler beats a quality wrestler who I'm a big fan of. Let me put it
Mm,
that way. Like I wouldn't like the greatest live match I ever saw in 50 years of attending was Flair and Steamboat. So
mm. I
if
would have
I
loved to
saw,
be that.
oh my, it was unbelievable. And if I saw a Ricky Steamboat lose to a late 80s, early 90s cartoonish, Vince character, I didn't appreciate that because I'm like, he's a better athlete, a better wrestler, and this just is unfair. But yeah, so I understand what you're saying. I get that. What match really bothered me when Sheamus beat Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania in like seconds or whatever. It was like a minute.
Oh, yes.
I'm like, that brought it on consumer fraud. I'm like, I wanted to see that match, you know? That big Daniel Bryan fan, Bryan Danielson, yeah.
Yeah. No,
He's an artist.
my biggest consumer fraud in that regard is actually Steamboat losing the Intercontinental belt to Honky Tonk.
It's funny. Of all the characters that Vince created, and he destroyed a lot of guys. Red Rooster, and even Dusty Rhodes was ridiculous.
Polka dots.
I kind of liked Honky Tonk Man because the few times I saw him live, and I barely went to WWE that era. The few times I saw him live, it was like the fans would be booing him out of the building, and he would go, "Thank you very much," and I found that amusing.
Yeah, I just didn't take to that character, and I thought the wrestling was sloppy too. I didn't think he was.
Oh, he wasn't. He wasn't a Ricky Steamboat level wrestler, but he was a competent wrestler.
Yeah, barely. I mean, when I look back now, I see some of the enhancement talent, how good they are as workers. I mean, I used to love watching Scott Casey. I thought Scott Casey was an amazing, and I thought he could have. I look back now and I thought, well, he could have been Vince Barnes' answer to Magnum TA with a slightly different look,
What happened with Vince is a lot of the NWA guys, if they weren't, 7 feet tall with 24-inch arms, they were relegated to, I hate to use the word jobbing, but basically, you had some great wrestlers come in, Al Perez, and, like you're saying, Scott Casey headlined in Texas and other places.
Exactly.
Yeah, so these guys were, and Slaughter's partner, what's his name? Sergeant Slaughter's partner in the NWA. Canoodle. Don Canoodle was a damn good wrestler. Exactly.
Yeah.
And he came into WWF and they did nothing with him. So you go from main eventing arenas in the NWA to the opening match or whatnot in WWF. And part of it was because they didn't have that superhero, supervillain body that Vince fetishized. So it was unfortunate because, I would go to the NWA in Philly every month, New York to Philly. And it was about a 2.5-hour drive or a 90-minute train ride or whatnot. And it was well worth it. And I saw guys like Terry Taylor, and they were getting a push, and they were excellent wrestlers. And they came into WWE, and they were destroyed. So,
oh yeah, because I remember because I'd read about his stuff in the Mid-South when I was reading the Aptomags, and I thought, oh yeah, this is going to be good. Okay, I did realise he was a bit smaller than most of the guys, but he still had a good build. He had a good look for the ladies.
But why should size preclude anything? This is Vince's thing.
Well, to that end, I go I'm now talking I've said on my show previously, the believability thing. Let me talk to you about a little fellow who, in a movie, he gets a job. He's from another country, gets a job as a supervisor in an apartment block. He takes out 5 young blokes who are all black belt martial artists, including one of them who's the reigning 3-time state champion. And this is some little old bloke. You know who I'm talking about, don't you?
No.
Mr. Miyagi.
Oh, okay.
So, if I just described you to you without saying it's Mr. Miyagi,
right,
and you'd be like, nah, that doesn't sound plausible. But Hollywood made everyone believe that this little frail Japanese guy who did look just quiet, got about his business. They made him believe in not one, not two, but three Karate Kid movies. Oh, there's another one when he had a girl as his protege. And he takes a kid who never did karate before. So he's not only beaten up five guys who are black belts in karate, he's taken another kid to take on the three-time champion, and in a couple of months he's taught him how to beat this other guy.
Yeah.
And then they try and say AEW, and all the wrestling has some elements that are not believable or not plausible. But both companies, and even TNA, I've caught a bit of TNA online because we don't get it here in Australia, and some of their stuff they've been doing is pretty good. It's entertaining. Um, with Joe Hendry, he seems like he's getting a good following.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't buy into the size thing myself, but
No. I would rather see a quality little guy than some big muscled up guy who can't do much. Like I would see the Steiners in the '80s, and I much preferred them to the monstrous Scott Steiner who
yeah,
slowed
yeah,
down, didn't move as well, and wasn't as good in the ring.
yeah, absolutely. That early Steiner brothers when they just ran their college uniform type thing.
Yeah,
That
tremendous.
yeah,
But Scott Steiner solo, when he had, he looked like Hulk Hogan or whatnot. It was he just didn't move as well.
no, he probably made more money, but yeah, no, I wasn't as much a fan as I was because I remember getting a tape. Um, because in America you guys use NTSC in your TV things, whereas here in
You're
Australia we've got
freezing up.
PAL, and we no, so are you. No, you come back to yeah.
Okay.
But you watch when you watch this back when I've gone through everything because I'll talk about it offline. But yeah, it won't freeze up. But the oh yeah, the tape I got because we just got an NTSC playback video recorder, and I managed to procure a tape from somewhere of that Iron Man tournament
Right.
from '89. And I thought, because I was a big Road Warriors mark, and I thought that was the first time someone was on the same power level as Road Warriors, and they just moved well.
The Road Warriors, I would see them in the NWA, and the charisma when they would come down the aisle to that entrance music. The place
Mm.
exploded. They were great. I think
Oh,
the
yeah.
greatest tag team of all time was the Midnight Express. Those
Yeah.
guys were amazing, amazing.
Well, I did get to see them, so Road Warriors still get it for me. And
Midnight
I met,
Express, Midnight Express, and Rock and Roll Express against each other. That was like art. Night after
yeah,
night. Every time you saw them, they had great, great matches. Road Warriors. It depended who they were in with. I saw them on great nights, and I saw them, where it was disappointing. I saw the Road Warriors against the Freebirds headline the Meadowlands, and it was disappointing. It depended who
yeah,
they were in with.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I met Road Warrior Animal about 2001, and he just wrestled a show here in Australia, which had a lot of ex WWE show wrestlers, not WWF at the time, and it was he. Well, he actually it was when Hawk was having his problems, and he wasn't clear to wrestle that night.
Yeah.
So this guy who was an ex rugby league player who was actually became famous as one of the gladiators, a guy named Vulcan. I don't know what his real name was. He was a stand-in road warrior for that night
Hmm.
against Public Enemy in a tables match.
I like Public Enemy. They were colorful. I used to go to ECW in Philly and at the Elks Lodge in Queens. ECW, they kind of jumped the shark when you had like the third flaming table at the end, but
Yeah,
I saw, but they had Eddie Guerrero, and they had some great talent. Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero, that was amazing, just
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, that's where I first got stuck in with Rob Van Dam. I thought, who is this guy?
Rob
He's
Van Dam was
amazing.
great.
He's amazing. I mean, you could easily say, "Oh, Flippy" and this and that, but he he had just for every wrestler, he had a couple of set moves, but he can flip things around.
Yeah, no, he was tremendous, and I just think it was overkill with the tables and stuff by the end. It was the law of diminishing values. When you get to
Yeah.
that third table, the flaming table, the fourth table, I preferred seeing the luchadors and, like I said, guys like Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko who would wrestle. It was a great mix because on the same shows, Public Enemy and the Gangsters would have crazy brawls. Terry Funk and Sabu live was unbelievable,
Oh,
unbelievable. Those
goodness.
guys.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Yeah. Now just one final thing with the movie The Wrestler got nominated for Oscars. Did you get to go to the Oscars that year then?
No, I was at the New York Film Festival, which was very prestigious. Lincoln Center. We had 2,300 people in the audience, $40 a ticket, sold out, and one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. And I'm sitting there with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and the scene comes on, that really tragic autograph scene,
Mm-hmm.
and my girlfriend looks at the screen and she looks at me. She looks at the screen. She looks at me. She goes, "That's you." I acted with Mickey in the film. We improved it. Aronofsky just like waved me over and said, "Go up to Mickey, ask him for an autograph and a Polaroid." And Mickey whispers in my ear, "Just improv it." I'm
But
not an act. I'm
you
not
didn't
an act.
smarten her up.
No, well, I didn't know myself. I didn't edit the film. I'm sitting there like anybody else watching it. So I'm like, wow. So then later in the film, there's the scene with Mickey and his daughter. I should say Randy the Ram and his daughter, and he goes, "I'm just a broken down piece of meat." And I look around me, and everybody's crying. They're crying. And I'm like, wow, we spent 7 years off and on making this film, and it works. It works. And the film ended, and the credits rolled, and there's my name up there, and I was very proud, associate producer, and standing ovation, spontaneous standing ovation at one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. And as we exited, it felt like the Oscars because people are grabbing you. Can we do a quick interview? Can we get a picture? It was really a magical night. And am I allowed to curse on your show?
Oh, why not?
You sure? At
Yeah.
the rap party, Aronofsky is making a little speech. We're at a nice club in Manhattan, and he goes, "Quote, I don't know what the fuck we have, but we have something." That's exactly what he said, word for word. I'm not paraphrasing. He says, "We have something." And when I sat there at the New York Film Festival, I knew it. And again, we shot this on $6 million, which would be like the food budget for the Avengers or Spider-Man today. And for 6 months leading up to that film, I took Aronofsky and the guys on the road, the indie shows, Ring of Honor shows, Johnny Valiant's comedy show, conventions. That convention scene in the film came from, I took them to a convention in New Jersey, and it was kind of like the WWE Hall of Fame. Samoans, Moolah, Mae Young, Johnny Valiant, Nikolai, Iron Sheik, Tony Atlas. It felt like the WWE Hall of Fame, and there was nobody there. It was more wrestlers and vendors than fans. It was dead. to the point where Iron Sheik's head was down on the table, sleeping. It was sad. This was a real convention. So the screenwriter, Rob Siegel, I wasn't writing the script, but I was going over the wrestling content so it would ring true. And Rob Siegel wrote that sad autograph scene into the next version of the screenplay. Because Aronofsky that whole day was going, Evan, where is everybody? Where is everybody? Because Aronofsky and Scott Franklin, the money guy, the executive producer, they were 80s wrestling fans, and these were their heroes, and they're sitting there, twiddling their thumbs. And I said, it's not always glamorous, Darren. I mean, and that's what he captured in the film. And for people critical of the film, yeah, we get it. Yeah, some of these guys end up well, live well, but many don't. And we were telling Randy's story. We weren't telling, Bret Hart's story. Bret Hart has a beautiful place and saved his money and did well. You're telling certain stories in a film.
Do you think someone down the line could ever tell like a Bret Hart or a Roman Reigns type story to say, well, they've struggled with this and that, and look where they are, look where they ended up.
Well, Bret Hart had tragedy. His career was shortened because Goldberg kicked him in the head, accidentally, of course. But his career was shortened. His brother unnecessarily plummeted to his death. I mean, and they continued the show disgracefully. My friend Nicole Bass was there that night. She was in the following.
She was the next match. Yes.
And Nicole said to me, I write about Nicole in my book. I love Nicole. She said to me, they wheeled him by, Owen Hart, and he was blue. She said, we knew he was dead. We knew.
Because that was just as they were about to do that promo.
So she said she started hysterically crying, and the powers that be backstage, pull yourself together. The show must go on. You're up next. She said she went out there in a fog. Okay.
I always thought the police should have stopped that, because the minute he fell, that became an accident scene.
Yeah.
Whether he was still alive or not, there was an investigation that needed to be conducted, big show or not.
In interviews, Vince said, if I fell to my death, I would want them to continue or whatnot. But maybe wrestling's not that important. Maybe a 33 or 34-year-old guy who was a husband and father dying is more important than just another one of 12 or 13 or 14 pay-per-views that year. Maybe it should have been, it should have been stopped.
Absolutely, because if that was just an ordinary construction site, it would have been roped off and investigators come in. That's what happens here in Australia. No matter what it is, if that was doesn't matter whether it was a rock concert or whether it was just a manufacturing plant or what have you. We have this body called WorkSafe, and they do regular checkings of this and that of just ordinary factories, making sure you got to have this area taped off, you got to have this area marked for walking, this area for forklifts. This area is where you can stack 1,000 kilograms of stuff. This is the area you can stack 500 kilograms. And and I know wrestling has been more loosey-goosey with stuff in the past. But in this occasion, and Owen Hart was one of my favourites. Yeah. When I first saw him as Blue Blazer, I thought this was great. And I only found out after the fact that it was Owen Hart, because I'd once again read it in the aftermags. I didn't get any Stampede stuff in Australia.
Getting back to your point, so there's certainly a movie in Bret Hart's life. I mean, They unnecessarily killed his brother. His career was shortened. Everything he had to deal with in his life. Yeah, a lot of these guys, there's a movie in them or a documentary or both.
Well, Bret Hart's already had his documentary.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just saying you could do a scripted movie on Bret Hart's life. He had an
Yeah,
interesting life. He's had an
yeah.
interesting life. Um, a lot of these guys, I mean, Lanny Poffo used to say, "I saw the world on the promoter's dime," and Lanny Poffo, wherever he went, he would go to historic sites. He went to Edgar Allan Poe's grave. Things like this. I mean, these guys they like kings and queens or like paupers. They experience both depending where and when, what time in their careers. Some of these guys were starving on the road. Backlund was sleeping in his car at one point. Next thing you know, he's the
Oh
world
wow.
champion. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing to me because he was champion for so long, and he was
No,
still
no,
on
I'm
top
saying
before that.
early on, these guys were getting paid next to nothing, and they were on the
Yeah.
road, and they were starving, starving. I mean, Sweet Daddy Siki, there's a documentary on him. He said he was dumpster diving for food on the road. You know?
Mm. Oh wow, we could go on for hours like this because you talk about a lot of the things um, that I really like the old school stuff that I read up on, and I got throughout the '80s. I got myself an education on the old wrestling that continued. So you got your book there. That's called oh, where is there somewhere?
Wrestling
Wrestling
ring.
rings, blackboards, and movie sets.
Yeah, and there's 100+ stories in there. We just scraped the surface today. There's 100+ stories, um, wrestling, and I have multiple stories on the making of the wrestler that have never been told before.
Is that going to go in the book?
Oh yeah, that's in the book. Yeah, that's why it's called movie sets. Yeah,
No, but
we
have you
talk.
got another book? Have you got another book in you?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We're working on a book on John Tolos. Tolos was big in Australia.
Yeah, John Ancon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Dr. Mike Lano and myself, it's about 90% done. Tolos had a great, great career, and he was like the king of LA. I mean, huge in LA. Him and
Mm.
Blassie wrestled in front of 27,000 people in LA before WrestleMania. And Tolos came into New York to wrestle Bruno in 1974. I mean,
Okay.
Tolos was a great, great talker. Normal sized guy, always in good shape, but not a muscle guy, not a giant. This guy could talk you into a seat. So he
Hmm.
gets on WWF TV and he calls Bruno a spaghetti bender. Spaghetti bender. So the Italian fans wanted to murder him. This was an different era. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I love
And
John
you,
Carlos. He was great. So we're doing this out of love. You're not going to make $1 million on a John Tolos book. Half his fans are dead by this point, but some of these projects you do just because you're passionate about it. And I have a
this
movie.
show.
There you go. I have a movie. It's called Wrestling Then and Now. Kowalski's the star. Talk about Australia. Kowalski was a god in Australia.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's called Wrestling
yeah.
Then and Now. You can watch it for free, Tubi or YouTube, whatever. It's
That,
Kowalski, Don Arnold, who was a great, great old school wrestler, Nikolai, bunch of guys in it. Friends of mine. Basically, the theme of that movie is I was a school teacher, and the director was like, "Where'd you meet all these colorful wrestlers?" And we went on the road. We went to we were sitting in the house with Nikolai, and yeah, Nikolai was wonderful guy, wonderful, wonderful guy. I
yeah.
miss him.
I found out a few years ago he was Croatian.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And also you've got your Facebook page, um, Old School Wrestling Memories.
Evan Ginzburg's Old School Wrestling Memories, and I have my own page, just Evan Ginzburg on Facebook, and
Yeah.
there's tons of wrestling content on both old school old school and current stuff. I mean, I still watch wrestling today.
Yeah.
I won't squander 3 hours on Raw or SmackDown, but I'll watch their pay-per-views or whatnot.
Thank God for the fast forward button.
Yeah, even AEW. There's times I have to fast forward,
Yeah.
and I love it. I'm really an AEW fan. I think. I mean, Osprey, I'll watch wrestle anybody. That guy's amazing, just amazing.
Well, I mark out when the Australians come on, thinking how well we've got a few Australians that
Fletch
are.
is great. That guy's great.
Yeah, and I'm not into women's wrestling, but good on Rhea for what she's doing.
Oh, yeah, Rhea's top notch. Charlotte
Yeah.
Flair, top notch. Tony Storm is a great character.
Mm.
Yeah, Mariah May is worth watching. I mean, some of the female wrestlers are there just for looks. Some of the female wrestlers are great. It's like anything else. Same with the male wrestlers.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's exactly my point in what you want to enjoy. Yeah, if you want to enjoy this guy or that guy, this girl or that girl, whatever you go, you go. But I'm not going to do it because some of these tribalists. This last point, some of these tribalists, they'll love it. They'll love the wrestler when they're with their tribe.
Yeah.
But then as soon as they go to the other tribe, he was a hack anyway.
Well, vice versa. They hate him in AEW, then they go to we love Penta. Now he's not a spot. Now he's not a spot monkey. He's in WWE. We love him now. They're not hard to figure. Some of these fans.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Let me just say this: when I see wrestling fans, alleged fans, use the word hate, I hate this wrestler. I hate this promoter. I hate this promotion. You've crossed the line into obsessive. It's not worth hating them. They're not politicians. Hate some of the politicians. The wrestlers are just trying to make a buck. They're just trying to make a living and support their families. Yeah. They should fire these guys. These are real human beings with kids to feed.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Do what I do with this promotion. When I play into it, there's a bad guy there, and I'll look at him and tell him off, and he'll tell me off. Then afterwards we go and shake hands, and I'll say, "Yeah, you played your part really nicely. I like what you did." And he'll say thank you, and he's appreciative because that's what he's there to do. Yeah, we both know it's a work. Now we do. But even the days when I did know it was at work, I'd still go up to him and say, nice match. I enjoyed your work.
I mean, you don't hate a wrestler because you don't like his character or the push doesn't agree with you. They cross the line into obsessive, and the guys who know nothing but wrestling, they have no other interest, they're consumed by it, they could wear you out. There's more to life than wrestling. I mean, watch a good movie sometime.
Exactly. I tune most of that out because I think some of them start doing it for attention.
I mean, yeah, some of the clickbait guys, it reaches a point where you don't know, are they just stupid or do they really believe this? When they'll say something so outrageous.
Yeah.
It's even the prices at WrestleMania, 300 to 10,000 a ticket. I think you've kind of crossed the line into obsessive if you're spending 10 grand to watch a wrestling show. I mean, I don't get it. And I think, honestly, it's a numbers game. I think out of some of those fans, they can't all be rich. And some of them are going to max out their credit cards and get in trouble because they can't all have thousands of dollars for wrestling.
No.
Yeah.
No, for sure. But, yeah, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll let you get on with your day and go to the gym. I'm about to go to bed. We've got another day happening tomorrow.
What time is it over there?
It is 11:25 in the 11:25 in the PM.
Oh, so you're 14 hours ahead then?
Yeah.
Okay. I had no idea. Yeah, it was 8 in the morning when we started this interview. Yeah.
That's right.
Anyway,
All right,
thanks so
Evan.
much. I enjoyed it. Anytime, I'd be happy to
Yeah,
come.
I reckon so. This has been If You See Kayfabe. That was Evan Ginzburg, wrestling royalty.
Thank you
Make
so
sure
much.
you watch your stuff. Thank you, and hooroo.